The third ordinary session of the 2020 legislative year is on in Parliament, with calls from the National Assembly and the Senate to consolidate peace in the country and for a feasible state budget for 2021. Kalurers traumatized in the Adamawa region by highway robbery and animal theft benefit from the security belt put in place to neutralize the criminals and to restore peace and tranquility in a hard-working community. The indomitable Lions of Cameroon edged the Mambas of Mozambique 4-1 in a qualifier for the 2022 Africa Cup of Nations at the Reunification Stadium in Douala. The exciting and physical encounter in this newscast. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Those were the headlines of the 7:30 news. We apologize for the late start.
Il est essentiel que les mesures qui ont été indiquées soient absolument respectées par chacun de nous.
Lavez-vous régulièrement les mains à l'eau et au savon ou à l'aide d'un gel hydroalcoolique. Restez à au moins 1 mètre de distance des autres personnes, surtout si elles toussent, éternuent ou ont de la fièvre. Si vous avez de la fièvre, de la toux ou des difficultés à respirer, consultez un médecin.
The budgetary session is on in Parliament, and at the National Assembly, House Speaker Honorable Kawege Jibril enjoined the elected representatives to get actively involved in the peace process in the far north, northwest and southwest regions, condemning the recent killings in Kumba, while commending Cameroon's resilience in the face of challenges such as the coronavirus. He harped on the need to hasten the universal health coverage and the guarantee fund for small and medium-sized enterprises. Charles Ebune reports on today's solemn opening.
One by one, lawmakers, government officials and others involved in parliamentary work trooped to the conference center for the last ordinary session of the National Assembly for the year. At the helm of the government bench, Prime Minister Joseph Dion-Gute and other constituted authorities of the state. The long speech of the day for the 180 Chamber House is delivered by House Speaker Kawege Jibril. This session opens in a particular context marked by multiple crises in our country and in the world. In Cameroon, the security situation remains disturbing in the far north, northwest, and southwest. Concerned with the security situation in the far north, northwest, and southwest regions, the House Speaker hailed government's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. Despite the crisis, Cameroon remains solid in pursuing its march forward under the leadership of President Paul Biya. A minute of silence was observed for recently deceased parliamentarians as the House Speaker tasked each to work for peace in Cameroon in a session to adopt the next finance bill of the state.
The third ordinary session of the 2020 legislative year at the Senate opened with the Senior Vice President Abubakar Abdullahi expressing disgust over the murder of school-going children in Kumba and calling for the arrest of the authors of the hideous task. The plenary, attended by members of government, members of the judiciary and the diplomatic corps, he cancelled on the scrutiny and adoption of a 2021 state budget that will boost the country's economy. Senate's correspondent Charles Anyangwe tells us more.
After 4 months of recess, senators are back in the House chamber for the November session of Parliament. Opening the budgetary session at the Yaoundé Conference Center this Thursday, the Senior Vice President of the Abdullahi, sitting in for Senate President, condemned in strong terms the barbaric act committed in Kumba, during which 7 students were murdered by separatist fighters.
It is something that touched the entire world, the entire nation, and the Senate cannot be indifferent to that.
The Senior Vice President urged foreign countries harboring the sponsors of such criminal acts to support Cameroon in tracking down such individuals. Abubakar Abdullahi also stressed on the fact that the November session is essentially to scrutinize the finance bill for 2021.
The macroeconomic environment of the country, as it is elsewhere, is marked by slowdown in the economic activity due to many causes, the most important of which is the health crisis related to COVID-19.
The COVID-19 pandemic, according to some senators, should be one of the issues to be addressed during this session.
The ongoing pandemic has inflicted a lot of pains on our economic sector. The need for adjustments is therefore so high.
The senior vice president called for fruitful exchanges with the government led by the Prime Minister Joseph John Ngute for the accomplishment of their missions of voting laws and controlling government action.
And after that plenary chaired by the Senior Vice President of the Senate, Abubakar Abdullahi, let's get this press release from Elekem. In view of the December 6, 2020 election of regional councillors, the Director General of Elections informs members of the College of Municipal Councillors and that of traditional rulers that voter cards are now available and may be collected at the divisional branch offices of Elections Cameroon in their territorial jurisdiction starting from Monday, the 16th of November 2020. It is signed by the Director General of Elections, Dr. Eric Asuse. On to this sad news, the mortal remains of Madame Regine Ngonda Bijang, eldest sister of the head of state Paul Biya, have been coffined at the Yaoundé General Hospital. This was in the presence of President Paul Biya and wife, Madame Chantal Biya, including a select group of family members and the clergy. A homily was said by the Metropolitan Archbishop of Yaoundé, His Grace Jean Barga, ahead of tomorrow's burial in Vomeka. Chief Unity Palace correspondent Ashunienti reports.
Her name was Regine Ngonda Epous Bijang, eldest daughter in a family that has the honor of producing the head of state of Cameroon, Paul Biya. Mama Regine has begun the journey of no return. Her body is now coffined at the Yaoundé General Hospital in the presence of President Paul Biya and his wife Chantal, solid on their feet, both wearing black face masks and leading a very small group of family and aides, visibly afflicted but bearing grief with dignity, all in strict respect of the COVID-19 barrier measures dictated by government. In the requiem at the mortuary, the Metropolitan Archbishop of Yaoundé, His Grace Jean Barga, anchors his homily on the importance of love talked about by St. John. He says the departed woman was an epitome of love that she showed not only on her immediate family, but especially to Cameroon through President Paul Biya. And beyond that, she impacted several generations of people who today grieve in her demise. His Grace Jean Barga says, though dead, it is a new chapter of hope and everlasting happiness that has opened for the departed lady. He has urged Cameroonians to borrow a leaf from the life full of love she led. After the requiem, additional benedictions are undertaken on the body by the prelates with the full participation of the head of state and his wife in consonance with Catholic tradition. Madame Regine Ngonda Epous Bijang, who died aged 92, will be buried in the family tomb in Vomeka in the South region this Friday.
On to another sad note, the late president of the Chamber of Agriculture, Fisheries, Livestock and Forests, Joseph Hola Mata, has also begun his journey to eternity. The 59-year-old who died last September in Tunis, barely months after his appointment to the structure, was paid homage today at the morgue of the referral hospital in Yaoundé. The one-time Secretary of State, member of the National Assembly and senator will be buried in Zulabot. Constantine Bum reports.
This coffining at the Yaoundé Referral Hospital mortuary starts the funeral for the late president of the Chamber of Agriculture, Fisheries, Livestock and Forest, Macta Joseph Roland. Family, friends and mourners came to pay their last tribute. The ceremony was attended as well by some ministers who have worked together with him. The brief ceremony was followed by an official tribute At the conference hall of the Chamber of Agriculture, the tributes reflected the kind of person Magta Joseph was. During his short stay, he brought hope and opened the way for the Chamber to move forward, meeting the needs of the local population.
He did much. He gave us a vision on how to modernize the Chamber. He gave us hope on how to mobilize the resources for the Chamber. He equally taught us how to mobilize the rural world so as to improve on our agriculture.
He died at the age of 59 in Tunis, capital of Tunisia, on September 22, 2020. He was a former senator of the ruling CPDM and spent only 4 months at the head of the Chamber, where he had little time to put his vast experience to the service of the Chamber. His mortal remains will be laid to rest in his hometown, Yukaduma.
May the souls of the departed rest in peace. In our Thursday of the Regions, we spotlight the phenomenon of hostage-taking for ransom and kidnappings of cattle rearers. Although the vice is gradually being brought under check by security forces, most of the victims still live in fear and continue to count their loss. Ellis Waji Bangmia caught up with one of the former hostages who's yet to recover from the trauma.
Fear, anxiety and depression grips any inhabitants of Yokotonu village each time the words hostage-taking are mentioned. The ruler, Muhammadu Maruf, vividly recalls how he was kidnapped on December 24, 2019.
Ils sont descendus chez moi. Des hommes armés.
Heavily armed men stormed my house that day and forcefully got into my room. I did not resist and they asked me to follow them.
Trop insister pour me défendre.
After forcefully trekking for 3 days, the kidnappers finally settled with Maruf in one of their camps.
Ils ont exigé un montant de 70 millions.
They called my relatives and requested 70 million francs as ransom. From that day, I went through untold sufferings, batterings of all sorts.
The kidnappers were constantly on the move, going through mountains, rivers, bushes, and lots more. On March 26, 2020, Maruf was released. Though a free man today, the traditional ruler still fears the unknown and calls on the population to remain vigilant.
A security bill has been enforced by forces of law and order in the region to stop the recurrent highway robbery, cattle theft and even the trafficking of light weapons, characteristic of the area. Their professionalism and the collaboration of the population have led to a considerable return of calm and serenity, with a good number of arrests recorded. Amos Eno Nyaketagbo tells us more.
In times past, it was difficult for a week to go by without cases of abduction recorded in the Adamawa region. The targets were mainly rich cattle breeders or businessmen who could readily cough out huge chunks of money in exchange for their freedom or those of their loved ones. In 2018 only, there are reports of 150 abductions with a lump sum of 500 million paid as ransom. The personal implication of the highest authority in the nation through the dispatching of a specialized unit of the gendarmerie to add up to the existing combat troops on the ground yielded fruits.
This population is going about his activity without hindrance. All the schools are open, rural villages safe. There is no cases of hostages taken.
Thanks to the dexterity of the defense forces in restoring peace and serenity, deserted villages have regained life as those who fled are returning in their numbers. Abandoned economic activities have been reignited.
In other news, a series of major public conferences on regionalisation and institutional innovations have been launched at the University of Yaoundé too. Today's keynote speaker was the Minister of Decentralisation and Local Development, Georges Elanga Obam, who expounded on the reforms on the law on regional and local authorities, amongst them the disbursement of 15% of the state budget to local authorities and a special status for the Northwest and Southwest regions. Beatrice Lawsamba reports.
Relishing an opportunity to talk to a think tank for policies at the University of Yaoundé Toussoua, the Minister of Decentralization and Local Development presents institutional innovations regionalization has brought.
22 powers have been devolved exclusively to councils. Citizen participation in local governance has been reinforced. 15% of the state budget is allocated to decentralization and government delegates to make room for city mayors.
The decision to create decentralized regions is said to have been born out of research, and its implementation is expected to be preceded by solid research which the university walls provide. The series of major public conferences launched here at the University of Yaoundé 2 provides a forum for policymakers to stay in close touch with educational researchers in order to improve and renew the country's policies.
The cost of eggs in local markets is a cause for concern for most inhabitants as they yet to understand the sudden price hikes. Dealers in markets like Mokolo in Yaoundé blame the change on the shortage of supply, while poultry farmers attribute the situation to the coronavirus pandemic that prompted the closure of borders. Beatrice Ngum investigates the fluctuation in the price of this source of protein.
These are stores specialized in the supply of eggs in the Mokolo market in Yaoundé. The eggs are in abundance, yet consumers and retailers complain of price hikes.
We used to buy more than 50 cartons of eggs, but now I can only buy 30 because of the price increase. Breeders say the laying hens are old and are being replaced with new ones.
Poultry breeders blame the situation on the avian flu, COVID-19 and low national production. They say inputs like laying hens are imported.
In 2016, some producers sell their chicken because of bird flu. The COVID made that producers sell all their chickens because of closure of the border.
But as the festive period inches in, the prices are gradually dropping, they say.
The price that I was having on Monday, Wednesday, and today is not the same. And next Monday, the price will go down again then until the price will go down for 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7 for the bigger eggs.
And projections are that the prices could go as low as 1,500 francs for a dozen of eggs.
How to effectively combat cybercrime, which violates the rights of persons and robs them of their financial resources, is the focus of an exchange in BIYA. The occasion is a capacity-building seminar organized by the National Agency for Information and Communication Technologies and TIC. Fem Bonui Ayise reports that the law on cybercriminality and sanctions for defaulters were presented during the workshop.
Cybercriminality is reportedly on the rise in the Southwest region, and in a bid to curb this phenomenon, the National Agency for Information and Communication Technologies and TIC organized a capacity-building seminar for regional and local government personnel in BIYA.
These skills can help to protect our critical infrastructure. These skills that they will go can help also to counter cyber threats that are very rampant in our society.
For 3 days, participants will be drilled on information security, data protection, and so much more.
We need to encrypt our data. If you put in data on your flash drive, you don't know if that's going to fall on the road and actually have someone pick it up and read your data. Most importantly, I said, was the two-factor authentication when we are logging into social media.
The seminar seeks to empower participants with the necessary ICT skills to combat cybercriminality in the Southwest region.
Some trainees of the African Institute for Computer Sciences in Fu and in Marwa have received end-of-course attestations. The project, carried out in collaboration with the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Civic Education, intends to empower young people in new information and communication technologies, as Victor Siga reports.
These are beneficiaries of the ICT training project set by the African Institute of Computer Sciences to help combat youth unemployment. 50 trainees have been empowered in information and communication technology. A similar event took place in Marwa, Far North region. Here, the fourth batch of trainees who underwent courses in secretaryship, maintenance of software and database design at the Marwa branch were equally handed attestations.
It was not easy, but I did all my best that I intend.
Meanwhile, the resident representative of the institute encouraged more enrollment.
ICT training is very, very important for young women and children. And Mrs. Chantal Biyas wants to train everybody in our country.
The next phase will be in the West region, where some 5,000 trainees will be honored.
Still in health, the 2020 International SAMITO Board of Directors and Staff of Pediatric Adolescent Treatment in Africa is underway on the theme Reaching Goals and Rebuilding the Frontline of Pediatric and Adolescent HIV Service Delivery during COVID-19. Members are those expected to design ways of addressing the pandemics and other non-communicable diseases. Victor Siga once again. We definitely shall be having Victor Siga's report in our subsequent newscasts. It's about time that we talk about COVID-19, and tonight we talk about the realities of a second wave of the coronavirus in the country. This can be averted if inhabitants seriously consider the wearing of face masks, hand washing and physical distancing in public places. With the easing of such attitudes noticed nowadays, Baldwin Sama and his guest, Dr. Joseph Okam, say it is a danger for the community. Hello, Baldwin.
Good evening to you, Esther Kima. I should say it is a possibility that most Cameroonians tend to neglect, a possibility for the country to embrace a second wave of this pandemic. We are talking about the coronavirus pandemic simply because most Cameroonians have stopped respecting most of these outlined barrier measures against the spread of the coronavirus. What is the major risk if the country should embrace a second wave of this virus? We discussed that tonight with our guest, Dr. Joseph Okam. He is a virologist. Good evening to you, Doctor.
Good evening, Baldwin.
What is that major risk in case the country gets to embrace a second wave of this pandemic?
Yes, Baldwin. What we have observed during the month of March up to August, we had our own first wave of this pandemic. And towards the month of August and September, we had the lowest rate of positivity, around 5%. And this is because during this holiday period, people were staying at home, there was no mixed up within the community, and people were trying to listen to barrier measures during that period. But now with the school resumption, with return to sport activities, with return also with the reopening of borders, now there is a population migration which is quite important. And because of this, we don't want to stop people from doing their activities, but when doing these activities, make sure you should have your face mask, make sure you should also keep the physical distancing. Those two practices, if they have been done extensively, then we should be able to prevent transmission even in the course of doing our activities.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joseph Okam, for being a guest this evening. The take-home message from here is that we should discourage this whole idea that the coronavirus is history in Cameroon. The virus is very much a presence among us. We should simply continue respecting all these outlined barrier measures. By so doing, we try as much as possible to stop the spread of the virus in the country. Back to you, Esther Kima.
Thanks very much, Baldwin Sama. It is vital that we stay indoors if we can and go out only when it is absolutely necessary. Now on to one of our top stories. The Indomitable Lions of Cameroon have put up a scintillating game against the Mambas of Mozambique. They beat their opponents today 4-1 at the Douala Reunification Stadium. The Lions have thus consolidated their lead in Group F with 7 points. Baldwin Sama has the highlights of the encounter.
In memory of the murdered secondary school students in Kumba, Cameroon's Indomitable Lions renew with victory at the Reunification Stadium some 22 years after. The Indomitable Lions of Cameroon dominated the first half of the game as at the 20th minute, a Christian Basogok Karl Toko Ekambi combination did not yield fruits. 33 minutes into the game, Vincent Aboubakar, after dismissing the Mozambican defense, failed to open scores for Cameroon. He bounced back minutes later with his powerful header to open scores for Cameroon's Indomitable Lions. Their 1-0 lead they maintained after the first half of play. Upon resumption for the second half, Vincent Abubakar unleashed a powerful shot, scoring a brace, putting Cameroon 2 goals up. The goal festival continued minutes later through Frank Zambo Anguissa's powerful header from a corner kick at the 55th minute. Mozambique benefited from a lack of concentration in Cameroon's defense to reduce tally. The Lions roared again through Clinton J's clinical shot at the 80th minute for the 4th goal. After 90 minutes of play, it was a 4-1 win for Cameroon's indomitable Lions, who consolidates their leadership position in Group F on 7 points while waiting for the return leg match against Mozambique in Maputo on Monday.
Still in sports, an extensive sports center has been constructed by the Ministry of Finance to promote tourism and leisure in the country. It is lodged at the Mundi Hotel in Mefu and Afamba division of the center region and will host Shan and AFCON teams. Daniel Ekonde presents the facility.
Lying in the Mefu and Akono division, southwest of Yaoundé, is the multifaceted Mundi Hotel, which has a long sports infrastructure that can carry 6 disciplines. Imposing is a football stadium with stands of about 1,000 spectators. Athletic tracks qualify the facility for track and field events. Then an auxiliary pitch beside. Tennis can also be played here extensively with 4 courts put in place. A basketball court as well as a volleyball space are also part of the sports chain. Isolated from the centers is a 4-meter deep swimming pool, which is semi-Olympic. The hotel is 3-star in classification. It holds 56 rooms, 4 suites, a restaurant and a conference hall. The Director General of Taxation, Modeste Mopa, who is also President of Mundi's Administrative Council, says the sports and leisure facility is not only open to its staff and outsiders, but also for professional athletes and sports groups.
From sports, today's advertorial, How to Feed Africa by 2035, is the focus of the 6th International Agribusiness Summit hosted by Cameroon. The event is under the patronage of the Minister of Trade, Luc Magloire Baga Atangana. Clarissa Itakang reports that it will provide opportunity to partner with investors and to facilitate the funding of enterprises.
7 agroecological zones in one place, Cameroon, a landmark which distinguishes the country from many others, making agriculture a prized sector around which to build the economy. It is on this premise that Cameroon is hosting the 6th Agribusiness Summit. Trade officials are putting forth the proceeds to be gained from being part of a high-level discussion which focuses on growing agriculture, trade and industry. The goal is to guarantee that Africa is fed by 2035.
We have land. We have the population, the youth, the women who can work. But we need funds. We need also technology to develop it. It's a good opportunity for us to be able to attract foreign investments, to develop value chains. The question indeed is to be able to process and to incorporate international value chain.
The contribution of a host of actors in the development chain is crucial.
Ours is technology with aquaponics. We want to bring aquaponics initially through training to do workforce development and capacity building. And then once we do the training, then we want to build much larger facilities for very large commercial production.
Meanwhile, the opportunities for investments have been hailed.
Within the budget support program actually that we are running, the agro-industry and all the rural sector are key sector, are priority sectors. And so we can say that the European partner is willing to help Cameroon in putting in place his own strategies and mainly strategies concerning the agro-industry.
Growing agribusiness is said to be achievable if the right keys are available to unlock the potential. Promoters of the idea are therefore hoping to see commitments translated into action.
Our main news item tonight was the 3rd ordinary session of the 2020 legislative year, which is on in Parliament with calls from the National Assembly and the Senate to consolidate peace in the country and for a feasible state budget for 2021 that will boost economic growth. Tomorrow at 7:30 p.m., your host will be Benin Ubagana. But our programs continue on the CRTV, and you will be in the company of Adam Bala at 8:30 p.m. Have a lovely beginning of the weekend. I'll be back on Monday. God willing. Good night.
In this connection, we should avoid stigmatizing